Today's episode of the Mind Sculptors podcast is sponsored by TCG Player, your source for all your trading card game needs. Use our link in the description the next time you get your cards to help support the show. Today's episode is also made possible by our Patreon subscribers. If you want to support the show directly, head over to patreon.com/the Mind Sculptors and you can become part of the SCULPTY family today. Or if you don't want to do any of that, leave a like and comment on YouTube or a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts as an offering to Algorithm Jesus.
And we're back.
Yes.
It's the Bloomburrow set review.
Part
Dose. Welcome everybody to the Mind Sculptors. I'm Cal.
And I am Ian.
This week we are going to be continuing our little exploration into the world of Bloomburrow. Mm-hmm. And last week we did the commanders of the set. This week we are going to be looking at the rest of the set. So that's what we're going to be doing this week. What?
I know people will be giving me shit for eating on this episode, but it's 5 p.m. and this is my first opportunity to do so.
I have the best podcast snack, which is pretzels.
Yes, of course. Oh, wow. What a crunchy sound, Cal. Good for the audience.
That was a great treat for me in the editing booth later.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I should get to hear how bad that sounds in audio.
Yeah. You should you should put a little censor bar over us eating because it makes people so mad.
I was on a video with Brian Koval and Pleasant Kenobi a few years ago.
Yeah.
We were playing CEDH on MTGO. I was snacking in the middle of it, and Vince just goes, "Are you eating fucking pretzels right now?"
That's so good.
So let's take a look at the set. I've got a pretzel. Like I said, the best podcasting snack. Ral, Crackling Wit is a legendary planeswalker that enters with 4 loyalty and costs 2 generic, a blue, and a red to cast. And it says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put a loyalty counter on Ral. It has 3 different planeswalker abilities. The +1 is create a 1/1 blue and red otter creature token with prowess. The second ability is a -3 ability. Draw 3 cards, then discard 2 cards. And the final ability is, one might call it the ultimate, is a -10. It says draw 3 cards. You get an emblem with instant and sorcery spells you cast have Storm. For the uninitiated, Storm is whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, copy it for each spell cast it before this turn. Pretty good.
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is all right. I'm interested to hear what you think about it, because when I look at it, I think that it obviously is one of those cards that it's like, oh yeah, you Storm with this card, dummy. Yeah. But where do you see this having a home? Specifically, what decks are you thinking really are, getting jiggy with it on this card?
Sure. I hate that. No, this feels like a card that you'll see in a deck like Flubs or Vadric or Mizzix, any of these sort of lower color, actual factual Storm decks, right? In CEDH.
True,
because
blue,
then you
Storm decks.
Yeah, blue red Storm, blue red plus
big S Storm.
Right. So this is one of those things where you do have to interrupt the thing a little bit. So either A, you're sort of playing Ral, making a jump block or passing, and then next turn going off with its ability, which is that brings you down to 5 spells needed to get that to pop off, which is, a lot, but also not at the same time. And then just start ripping spells with Storm and sort of basically you get that ultimate to resolve. There's a insanely high chance you win the game, right?
Yeah,
and
there's a pretty decent chance that you're got this one in the bag.
Yeah, for sure. And so that's kind of the idea, is that like you play it for its insanely high ceiling.
Yeah. I think it'll be interesting. I'm curious to see if people let people have this, if that makes sense. Because I think it's one of those cards that I think that you can get fooled by it maybe once. And I think then people, because a lot of people are just kind of write off Ultimate a lot of the time, because in Commander, you kind of have this like assumption that, well, Planeswalkers are never going to get there. The fact that whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you can get it up there pretty fast is nice. I think this is interesting. I don't know. I definitely like it in Vadrik. I think Vadrik could like definitely take advantage of this. And Vadrik and Mizzix, I feel like are pretty interchangeable, but both of those decks feel like they take a lot of advantage of this. But those big S Storm decks, I think, have those capital S Storm decks really probably are at minimum, because like those were the decks that were already playing like 1,000-Year Storm, right? So like this is just another,
not always, but this is that, but like a little more digestible, I think, realistically.
Yeah, for sure. Next card on our list, we're finally into the regular old creatures. It's Mockingbird. It is a 1/1 bird bard that costs X in a blue to cast. Has flying and says you may have Mockingbird enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield with a mana value less than or equal to the mana spent to cast Mockingbird, except it is a bird in addition to its other types and has flying. So at minimum, this is 1 mana copy of Esper Sentinel, right? Like this is at its floor is copy of
like a blue copy an Esper Sentinel and give it flying.
Yeah,
for
at base. So it's already starting off pretty good.
And then at 2, I don't know, Cal, are there any good 2 mana creatures that people copy a lot?
None that I can think of.
I was in Colorado and we were talking about this card and we were talking about Freedom Waffle, and I was like, all of us were like naturally relegated to go like mana value is less than, right? And they were like, no. It's like worst case scenario, this is a dorky 1/1 flyer that copies a mana dork or something.
And the fact that it just says mana spent, it doesn't give a shit if you paid the X cost or not, right? Like if you just pay 1 mana, you're just kind of like, cool, hey, that's a neat Deathrite Shaman you got there. I guess it has flying now.
This is like an auto include in Yuriko. It's an auto include in Edric, right? But also just like, I'm pretty sure I know Freedom's currently testing it in Blue Farm, right? Like it's like, I think this is really good with Tymna. Not gonna lie, it's kind of silly. I'm
interested to see if like this might be the card that like puts a Phantasmal Image to bed in like that type of deck, because you get the same effect from it for 2 mana.
Yes, but no, right? Like, and the problem with this card is that like it has a really high floor. It has a much lower ceiling, right? Like Image and stuff like that can copy big things for 2 mana, right? Whereas this has to be the mana spent is the mana it can copy, right? Which is in cEDH not as relevant, because a lot of the time we are copying 2 or 3 mana things with cards like this, but it's still different, right?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I'll be interested to see exactly where this lands. But there's a big win for Tymna decks.
Yeah, which we totally needed.
Yeah, because Tymna was really, really struggling there for a while. Next card on our list is Agate Instigator. It is a 1/3 lizard rogue that costs a generic and a red. Has Offspring generic and red. If you missed last week's episode, Offspring is a band from the 1990s that played kind of pump pop music. And they got a ability named after them, which is super cool.
So cool.
And I don't know what it has to do with the band yet, but
you may pay. They've been really quiet since the set has been.
Yeah, they've been really quiet. I'm really trying to figure out how this mechanic like relates to the band.
I really thought they would have said something during spoiler season, if I'm being honest.
You would have thought they could get card at least, right?
Yeah,
like, you know, show some respect out there.
Yeah.
But the way Offspring works is you may pay an additional generic in red as you cast the spell. And if you do, when this creature enters, create a 1/1 token copy of it. And Agate Instigator says whenever another creature you control enters, this creature deals 1 damage to each opponent. And one thing I do want to note about Offspring before we get like too deep into this thing is like Offspring needs the card to resolve. Like that is very important. It does not, as you cast it, create another copy that goes onto the stack. Your initial one has to resolve. And if it doesn't resolve, that was a cool 4 mana you just spent there, buddy.
Sure.
But
I don't think that's like a huge thing, but I do think it's like it's relevant.
It's a thing to be aware of, I think, is more my kind of approach with it. But this, I'm pretty sure, is an Omnixilis card. Pretty sure.
Well, the cool part is it's anyone who is playing Impact Tremor is an Omnixilis. Like this goes over that too, right? So like this is at a base level, it's an Impact Tremors that can be a Perforos if you need it to be, right?
Right.
But then, yes, you're right. It does individual triggers of 1 damage, right? So if you Offspring it and then play another creature, that is, I mean, first of all, if you Offspring it, it immediately gives you 2 draws with Op, right? Because they see each other, right? And then, are you bopping your head to Offspring songs in your head? Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Every time we say Offspring, my brain just like goes to a different realm.
No, I get it. Trust me. But then, every creature from now on just draws you 2 cards. So that's like not bad.
Whoa.
Anyways, next card.
Next card on our list is Dour Port-Mage. It is a 1/3 frog wizard that costs a generic and a blue. And it says whenever one or more other creatures you control leave the battlefield without dying, draw a card. Has an activated ability that costs a generic and a blue, and you tap it, return another target creature you control to its owner's hand. I love the flavor text on this card, which is find your mooring and stop clogging the shipping lanes. I don't know why, it just tickles me. So this is like really cool with like blink abilities specifically. So this is like very flatly a way to draw your deck with Emil Dockside and not needing really anything else. So what are your thoughts on this? Where does this go? What commanders are like in this?
Yeah, I mean, so this is definitely going to be for niche decks, right? But like any deck that has Flicker in the zone, like it just, you play this, right? Like, so I know like Brago's is like going to be another one. I mean, I guess you only have 1 draw per Flicker in that instance, but like, especially if you can do individual Flickers in the zone or as a part of your central game plan or like, self-bouncing, any of those things realistically, like Yuriko style stuff, right? Just all of those things apply for this, right? Also, like this is a Dockside doubler in a very roundabout way that also cantrips the ability, right? So like it just does a lot of stuff.
It wears a lot of hats.
It wears a lot of hats. Yeah, specifically one tiny little hat with a feather sticking out. But it's just a really interesting card. I think like you have to have the deck do something specific, right? Like it is needing a specific type of commander or card associated with that commander. But if you're doing the thing, it does it very well. It's also like, as far as fringe decks go, like good for like deck like Narumeha, which is like, infinite flickers. Like now I can draw my deck, like, really weird stuff like that, right?
Every time Narumeha gets a new card, Ian's deck gets just a little bit harder. It's just I think
this is the first time I've ever brought up Narumeha.
No, you've mentioned it a couple times in the like 4 years I've known you. But anyway, this is a cool card. When I don't know where it goes right off the top of my head. But I think that, what the big use case for it that I see is like, especially in decks that do like the Baron loops and the, Emil Dockside loops, it gives you something in the battlefield that just kind of gives you an out through a Draneth, right? So, maybe it's not worth it. I don't know, but it's cool. So next card on our list is Fireglass Mentor. It is a 2/1 Lizard Warlock that costs a black and a red. and says at the beginning of your second main phase, if an opponent lost life this turn, exile the top 2 cards of your library. Choose one of them. Until end of turn, you may play that card. So this is like obscenely easy to turn on, right? Like this just kind of happens like every turn, incidentally.
Yeah, like look at 2, pick 1 to play every turn for a 2-mana investment is really not bad. That is just like some free card advantage. And yeah, we don't play things like Dark Confidant anymore, but like there's also decks like Prosper that care about things coming from exile, and also like this doesn't hurt you. So you can play this in a Nas deck and not take a bunch of damage like you would with a Dark Confidant, right?
It's interesting because like I think like Ob Nixilis is a deck that like benefits the most from this, right? Because it's just like straightforwardly gives you more card draw.
I don't know that I would play it Nob, but I see what you're saying.
I mean, you're probably the reason I'm saying that is because it's like the most consistent way to trigger this, if that makes sense.
Sure.
I don't know if you play it Nob, but I feel like it could probably get the most mileage out of it, theoretically. But
you do play it probably in Gev Scaled Scourge, which we talked about last week.
Go check out that other video. Or podcast if you are listening on iTunes or Spotify. Next card on our list is Keen-Eyed Curator. This is a 3/3 Raccoon Scout that costs 2 green and says as long as there are 4 or more card types among cards exiled with Keen-Eyed Curator, it gets +4/+4 and has trample. And it exile has an activated ability that costs a generic and exile target card from a graveyard. So this is like a scavenging ooze, if you sort of.
Yeah, it's they 180'd it, right? So it's like instead of SCUs costing green to eat stuff, this is generic mana to eat stuff, right? So like that's the nice part about it. That's really it. It's if you're finding that you're in green, you're having some sort of anti-graveyard needs that endurance and SCUs don't solve, or you want to be able to hold up more generic mana for that activation, this is a good card doing that thing. It's really just a potential role player.
I do think the important thing to note about this versus SCUs, and I'm sure somebody in our comments is going to point this out because never fails, I'll say something that somebody in the comments will be like, you forgot to say this. And I'm like, I fucking said it. Anyway, you don't gain the life off of hitting creatures, and it also doesn't grow. So it's like floor is a bit higher than a SCUs.
Well, it does.
And its ceiling is lower. What'd you say?
I said it does grow once, to be fair.
It does grow once. But I think that's the main criticism of this, right, is its ceiling is much lower than a SCUs. But I do think going back to the Moneyball metaphor we made a few weeks ago, you're looking at that, like, what is the floor? What is the average that I can like pull out of this? And I think this has a pretty good floor to be worth Moneyballing this card around. Next card on our list is Osteomancer Adept. Did I say that right? Okay. Yeah. It's a 2/2 Squirrel Warlock that costs a generic and a black. It has a Death Touch and has an activated ability where you tap it, and until end of turn, you may cast creature spells from your graveyard by foraging in addition to paying their other costs. If you cast a spell this way, that creature enters with a finality counter on it. To forage, exile 3 cards from your graveyard or sacrifice a food. If a creature with finality counter on it would die, exile it instead. So when this was previewed, you, Phoenix, and I had a collective excuse me. We were all just kind of like, what?
Yeah. So they said, Yawgmoth's Will for creatures, or I guess like Breach for creatures more accurately, right?
Yeah, but you can also sack a food randomly.
Yeah.
Like, I guess it's flavorful, but
this is a weird one for sure, right? But like Creature Breach on a stick in certain archetypes, I don't know what archetypes, but in certain archetypes, seems pretty decent.
Seems fine.
Yeah, I feel like you have to have.
I don't know what you're playing it in.
Right. It's like a very specific self-mill style deck. But if you are doing that stuff, this is it's a very powerful effect for such a specific,
specific thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So
It's very funny because when I feel like a lot of our set reviews end up turning into us like being like, this is really cool and powerful, and I have no fucking idea what deck wants to play this. That's how I feel about this card. Is I just like, I genuinely don't know off the top of my head a deck that could take advantage of this the best. But there's no way to look at this and be like, that's bad. Like it is pretty good. So we'll see where this lands. I'm sure it will find a home somewhere. Next card on our list is Plumecreed Escort. This is a 2/1 bird scout that costs a generic and a blue. Has flash, flying, and it says when it enters, target creature you control gains hexproof until end of turn. So yeah, it enters the battlefield and gives something hexproof.
Yeah, that's really it. Like I can see it seeing playing like a Nadu style deck, right? Like the idea that you are flashing in, getting a Nadu trigger, getting protection to a creature, then also having an additional body next turn to Shuko or Greaves or whatever it might be, right? It's like it's pretty relevant, right? For a deck like that. It's good for creature combo decks. It's a good way to just protect your stuff, but also be a creature which, depending on your deck, if being a creature is an upside, it therefore lends itself to this card is better than like a Tamiyo safekeeping or whatever. You know?
Yeah. And I do think notably is it's also based on the interaction packages that most people play harder to counter than like a Tamiyo safekeeping. So
of course.
To, like keep in mind with that. Overall, I kind of mid on this but I see what you're saying. Like, I think what you're saying is super valid. I think like a Nadu is where I would expect to see this.
Yeah.
Next card is really fucking good.
Yep.
This is like generic staple good. Like this is
like I will expect this card to be played for the rest of CEDH.
I get ready to see this in every cEDH pod with a blue deck at it because it's Pollywag Prodigy. It is a 1/3 frog wizard that costs a generic and a blue to cast. It has Evolve, which whenever a creature you control enters, if that creature has greater power or toughness than this creature, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature, which is so fucking stupid. And whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell with mana value less than Pollywog Prodigy's power, draw a card. Why the fuck did we need this?
Yeah.
God damn it.
I do not think we need this card in this format. Realistically, I think it is, if anything, too good. I think that I expected a card like this in like the Modern Horizon set because I think it's that good.
Yeah.
Base level.
Now, notably, this is from the Commander set. So they didn't just set Modern on fire. So there's that.
Yeah.
But
like it's so base level. Let's think about this. How many times in an EDH game has your opponent cast? Oh, I don't know, any of the following cards: Mana Crypt, Lotus Petal, Mox Diamond, Chrome Mox, Lion's Eye Diamond, Jeweled Lotus. Okay, cool, great. And then when they follow up with their Tymna, how many times have you heard the following cards played? Oh, I don't know. Silence, Flusterstorm, Soul Ring, Mana Crypt, Mana Vault. I don't know. What? If you evolve this once, it goes from decent to, great. This is just drawing you a card every 2 fucking seconds. So as long as your commander has more than 2 power, or 2 or more power, pardon me, this
in Tymna Crom is so fucking obnoxious. I fucking hate it.
Yeah, that's my biggest complaint about this card is like this is just the most blue farm of all fucking blue farm cards. And like curving this turn 1 into a Tymna turn 2 is just like, how the fuck are you supposed to beat that? Like actually,
this is almost a year removed from blue farm getting the biggest shot in the arm it's ever fucking gotten. And they're just like, hey, we see you've been juicing there, buddy. Yeah. What if we gave you more? Yeah. Like it's the like,
really.
It'd be like if you gave Barry Bonds more steroids in the time that he was, going off instead of, regulating the steroids.
Yeah,
we're giving them more. I don't fucking get it. It's just what benefit does this bring to we're already in a place, right, where generically speaking, whether it's at the casual space or the competitive space, where people are fucking sick and tired of Mystic Remora, Esper Sentinel, Rhystic Study, go on and on and on. And people are tired of it. And now we're getting more of it. Yeah. And arguably better than some of those because you can't fucking counter it. It just is going to happen. You can't pay for it. So like, this is a card that is really good. And like, I can't wait to play this in every blue deck that I own. But like, also fucking Christ, did we really need this? Like,
this is one of a few cards that I'm like, oh, I don't know if this is great for the health of this format and diversity in this format. I've gone on record saying that this set may be like one of the final straws in the should we even register a deck that doesn't have blue in it, which is a sentence I fucking hate, to be honest. And they just keep printing really good blue stuff.
I think this set to me makes Blue Farm more of a red flag on the numbers perspective, because what's going to happen is the more we get stuff like this, the more Blue Farm is just going to be the obvious and almost only answer to take to an event. And I just really hate that world. And I would like for that world to stop fucking existing.
Yeah. Now, this card, I will argue also in its defense. There's one we're talking about later that I agree a little more. This card at least like works with the other stuff too, right? Like you're going to play this in Zissa, you're going to play it in Kenrith, you're going to play it in Kinnan, like you're going to play it in all the best decks in the format. I just don't think like EDH
we didn't need it.
Cards. No, like it's just bad for the format. It's unhealthy. It's just really like, it just goes, oh, hey, here's 6 cards that you're going to mulligan towards at all times and then never get punished for playing these play patterns. It's just stupid, man. Like, I don't know. Yeah. Anyways, sorry to be depressing y'all, but the card is so good that it's depressing. Yeah.
That's where I'm at. Next card on our list here is 3-Tree Mascot. This is
we
a 2-1.
We can lump the next two together to be clear.
Well, I'm gonna read them individually.
Okay.
So we have 3-Tree Mascot, which is a 2/1 artifact creature that is a shapeshifter and has changeling. So it is every creature type and has a mana ability where it's for a generic mana, add 1 mana of any color, and you can activate only once each turn. The other card here that we're talking about is Barkform Harvester, also a changeling. It's a 2/3 that costs 3 generic, has reach, and for 2 generic mana, you can put target card from your graveyard on the bottom of your library. So these are cards that Ian has submitted to talk about on this podcast.
Yeah, they're artifact creature dwarves is what they are.
Magda cards.
Yeah, Magda cards. These are artifact dwarves. Especially, I know some Magda pilots were very excited about Barkform Harvester because when you're looping, basically
it makes a lot of that shit easier.
Yeah, to put stuff to the bottom of your library and then tutor it out again and then use the thing and then put it in the bottom of your library and then tutor it out again and then you get the point, right? Yep. And I'm pretty sure like the Apple lines that they're killing people with most consistently nowadays, just use this and Apple, and that's really all you ever need. So cool stuff. Yeah, literally. That's it.
Moving on to Bloodroot Apothecary. This is a 3/3 squirrel druid that costs 2 generic and a green. Has toxic 2, so players dealt combat damage by this creature also get 2 poison counters. A player with 10 or more poison counters loses the game. When Bloodroot Apothecary enters, you and target opponent each create a treasure token. Whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-creature token, that player gets 2 poison counters. So this is kind of a like get fucked dockside card, which is kind of neat.
This is the anti-dockside. Yeah, for sure.
Where do you see this being an effective card?
I don't know, to be honest. People are very excited about this as a dockside hate piece. I don't know if it's real or not. It's also a non-creature token. No, never mind. No, yeah, it's mostly a treasure hate piece.
Yeah, It also hates on like LED loops, which
it
is
doesn't. That's why I was checking.
Oh, it's a fuck. Okay.
Token. Right. That's exactly what I literally was just looking at.
So treasure shit. Man, guys, listen. This is why I hate Dockside. Is cards like this people get excited about because they're like, oh man, we can hate on the Dockside cards. And I'm like,
so to be clear, you hate Dockside because people don't know how to answer Dockside.
Yes, it's because they use the wrong answers to fix the problem. And it's just like the real answer to Dockside is Dockside of your own, honestly. But, anyway, next card on our list is also the most generically good card to come out of the set other than the other one. This is from the main set. This is Valley Floodcaller. This is a 2/2 Otter Wizard that costs 2 generic and a blue. It has flash and says you may cast non-creature spells as though they had flash. And we referenced this last week a little bit when we were talking about the mono blue otter commander. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, birds, frogs, otters, and rats you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. Untap them. So this is a card that has Ian really just in a tizzy.
Yeah,
Ian's feeling some feelings about this card.
Yeah, I am concerned about this card for the health of cEDH, if I'm being honest. I think Born Upon a Wind sort of drastically warped the format in a way in which we are starting to see it more and more because people are now getting acclimated to the play patterns that are just kind of busted with that card. And then they said, how about another one, but this one's harder to counter, and also if someone silences me in response, I still can do it next turn. Now, a lot of the sort of pushback about this card in conversation that I've heard is, okay, but what happens when you need your Dockside or you need your Thoracle to combo off? And I think those cards are relevant, but they are not all-encompassing. I very much am not looking forward to even more Necropotence lines in the format. Like, sorry, those play patterns are boring as hell. And just like never getting punished for them nowadays because you have 2 Borns and a Final Fortune is like not exciting to me. I think this is a piece that homogenizes the format. It makes it really hard to not be playing blue because any sort of long game is just one Emergence Zone versus Born and Floodcaller. Good luck. Dealing with that, right? I think this card is like really, really unhealthy for the format. And, maybe had we had this first without Born, I wouldn't care as much, right? But we have both of them.
Yeah.
And having 2 of this effect is not good for cEDH in general. I think we're just going to see the format really start to funnel. If I'm being honest, I don't like what this card does for the format. Is it the end of the world? Absolutely not. Like, I'm still going to be playing this format. It's going to be fine, right? One thing I do like that it does is it makes some of the, like, green turbo decks maybe a little bit more interesting, right? Like with Thrasios Vile stuff. I think there's, like, some interesting stuff you get from those because then suddenly, like, your Worldly Tutors are hitting your Born effects and things like that, right? Which is fun. But I don't know. At the end of the day, like, this is not a card that
fills me with joy.
Yeah, well, the crazy part is in a vacuum, it's exactly the kind of card that I really enjoy, right? Yeah. Given the current state of cEDH and where people are trying to push the format to as far as homogenization goes, right? I'm just going to be really fucking tired of seeing this card after a week. So, I don't think like if they crack the Ranger Captain, we might just die to Valley of Floodcaller or Born Upon the Wind kind of nonsense is like, I don't know if that's the most
place we want to be
for
at.
Me. Yeah, for the format. As I said, like the biggest thing that depresses me is like it feels like non-blue decks lost a lot of leg room when this and Pollywag got printed, to be honest. And the other part of this that's like not exactly great for me is like, okay, the counter argument is like, what are the things that stop these style of decks? And the answer is stacks pieces, things like Deafening Silence and Collect Roof and stuff like that. But guess what? Orcish Bowmasters was a printing that blew that out of the format. So Lord of the Rings, once again, exacerbating the problems that we're seeing here. Like, if Lord of the Rings didn't exist, I wouldn't care about this. I would maybe be a little annoyed at Pollywag, but I wouldn't really care that much because I would be like, oh, well, at least there's creature decks to counter it, right? But that's just not the case because the Lord of the Rings set has so drastically shifted our format to where now Bloomburrow as a follow-up is just a slam dunk in just a very negative direction, in my opinion.
I'm starting to wonder if because of like Floodcaller and, Born, if like Shimmer Zur, but without the Shimmer, just you play everything else is like back on the menu. Like,
potentially, yeah. But like at the same time, why would you do that when you could do it turn 2 with Rog, right? Like is
because I don't like Rog Rack, okay?
I know.
I don't want to play that stupid Kobold. Next card on our list.
They have 2 Necros and 2 Borns now, so buckle up.
Next card on our list is Lilysplash Mentor. It is a 4/4 frog druid that costs 2 generic, a green and a blue, has reach, and has an activated ability that costs a generic, a green and a blue, and says exile another target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a +1/+1 counter on it. Activate only as a sorcery. So this was a little bit of a callback to that card we were talking about earlier, where like if something leaves the battlefield without leaving, you draw.
It is so fucked up to me that they can print activate only as a sorcery on this card and print Valley Floodcaller in the same fucking set.
Yeah,
like absolutely the biggest middle finger in the entire world.
Get fucked. Don't even try to do something cool and interesting. You got to stop that at you can only do that at sorcery speed, buddy.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to Necropotence off, go right ahead. But if you want to blink your dockside, or you want to blink I don't know,
Cloud of Fairies or whatever.
Cloud of Fairies?
Yeah.
No way, dude. That's too powerful. It's too strong for my Magic the Gathering. It's too strong for my Minecraft server.
So I posted this a little while ago and people were like, will Emil exist? This seems bad. And I was like, yeah, not every deck has Emil. like their Teamer exists.
Yeah, this kind of like makes Teamer Sabertooth a little bit worse.
Yeah.
Like I think like one of the downsides of Teamers, I still think in those decks that play this, you probably just play both. But I think that one of the downsides of Teamer Sabertooth is the fact that you have to cast whatever you're doing. So
over and over.
You really open yourself up to a lot of interaction there. But the benefit with this is that you get that Emil effect in lower colors. You don't get shoehorned into whatever the fuck Emil is doing. So I mean, I guess it's the same amount of colors, right?
Yes, it is either green, white, or green, blue.
Yeah. So there you go. Whatever. You can play this in Kinnan, folks. There you go.
Sure.
You can.
You
can play Emil in Kinnan.
You can't.
Correct. I'm glad that we are on the same page. Next card on our list is Stormsplitter. This is a 1/4 Otter Wizard that costs 3 generic and a red, has haste, and says whenever you cast an insert sorcery spell, create a token that's a copy of Stormsplitter. Exile that token at the beginning of the next end step. So it's kind of a storm payoff.
You ever played the game 2048?
I have no fucking idea what that is.
The game where you'd start with like 2 2s and you slide them together, they become 4s, and you have to slide the other 2s together, they'd be 4s, and you have to slide the 4s together and they become 8s. And then the whole point was to get to 2048.
Is this like a game you play at like a Cracker Barrel?
No, it's like a 2010s website / phone game. Like,
I was too busy having sex with girls.
Fair enough. Well, while you were doing that, I was sliding those little blocks around. People anyway. Yeah, to all the other non-sex havers out there, I hope y'all are enjoying my 2048 references. But yeah, this is a card that gets very silly very fast. Because you play it and it's like, oh, it's a 1/4, right? And then you cast one spell and there's 2 of them. Oh, okay, cool. And you cast another spell and there's 4 of them. And then you cast another spell and there's 8 of them. And the math continues mathing.
Yeah, that is how math works.
Yeah, I think 7 is how you get to 128, which is like the kill people in commander number, or it's 128 or 256. I did the math with one of my clients at one point. So 6 or 7 spells is very good, and it kills people. Specifically, very good with like the Rowan deck, because it just kills them. Like really quick, because this will cost a red mana and then you can play a bunch of stuff after it and your opponents usually die. So it's a fun win con in like weird decks, but it's also like one that you can sort of play and then like it isn't a problem until it is, you know what I mean? So, and like after the first spell, if they kill it, doesn't really matter as much. It like slows down your progress for sure, but like you got to kill it before it starts multiplying.
Yeah, or else you're gonna have an infestation.
Yeah,
you're gonna have an otter problem.
Too many otter wizards.
Too many otters. This next card is 20-toed Toad. God, fuck whoever named this card. This is a 3/3 frog wizard that costs 3 generic and a blue. And it says your maximum hand size is 20. And whenever you attack with 2 or more creatures, put a +1/+1 counter on 20-toed Toad. I really hate that. And draw a card. Whenever 20-toed Toad, God, it makes me cringe inside so hard. Attacks. You see, this is the first time I'm saying the name of this card out loud.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm really getting the full effect of how this like hurts my mouth to say.
Why? You can say 20-toed Toad? 20-toed Toad, 20-toed Toad, 20-toed Toad.
Whenever it attacks, you win the game if there are 20 or more counters on it, or you have 20 or more cards in hand. So this is like the 20-toed Toad of Triskaidekaphile or whatever the fuck that card was.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that this is particularly good, but
yeah, people just kept talking about this card, and I was like, guys, y'all know it costs 4 mana, right? And they were like, but it has 20 toes. And I was like, okay.
But I can do the 20-toed Toad.
Yeah, I do also like, and this part is like so aggravating, but also like hats off to the artist for putting the toes in the mud. You cannot physically see the feet of this card, and therefore it is a work of genius, and I love that quite a lot.
No, this is beautiful. I don't know that this is going to be a problem in your meta game. If this is a problem at a cEDH table, I'm just gonna say it. I think that cEDH is in a good place. If this is a problem at a table,
if we're dealing with this instead of Pollywag Prodigy, then I'm a happy boy.
Yeah, you know what? I can work with that. But other than that, I think it's probably a little bit too mid. But it really sucks to say 20-toed Toad.
So
next, what?
I realize our next card is a legendary creature. Do we want to just record our reaction to this creature and then put it in last week's episode, or are we just keeping it where it lies?
It's keeping it where it lies, baby.
Okay.
So this can be a commander, but we're talking about it here as if it's not. This is a card you're going to play in the 99. Wick the Whorled.
I know. Every time I read Wick the Horde Mind, it's like
Wick the Whorled Mind.
that was you in college, apparently.
It was. I don't know what to tell you. I had a bit of a hoe phase.
You had a Whorled period.
I was whore-led, you could say. So this is a 2/4 legendary rat warlock. And I'm sure you could figure out who its patron is. It costs 3 generic and a black, and says whenever Wick or another rat you control enters, create a 1/1 black snail creature token if you don't control a snail. Otherwise, put a +1/+1 counter on a snail you control. Has an activated ability where you pay Grixis and sacrifice a snail. Wick deals damage equal to the sacrificed creature's power to each opponent. Then draw cards equal to the sacrificed creature's power. So this little, whore is a Grixis deck.
Yeah, I mean this is Grixis core plus infinite mana outlet in the command zone. Pretty good.
Yeah, we could have talked about this last week, but
yes,
we chose. This was on purpose.
Oh, yeah.
You're gonna want to play this in Blue Farm for sure.
No,
I think this is another piece that just makes Blue Farm so much better.
Yeah. This is part really of the problem.
This is the card from the set that makes Blue Farm a problem.
Yeah, actually, fuck everything we said about the other cards.
Those cards, no problem. This card though. Man, it's because all those rats you're playing. All those rats.
Yeah. Well, it's because Blue Farm is so Whorled.
Oh my god.
Okay. Anywho.
Let's see. Please don't watch this video. Next card. We're finally out of the creatures, baby. It's sorcery time. It's Tempt with Bunnies. It is a sorcery that costs 2 generic and a white and tempting offer. Draw a card and create a 1/1 white rabbit creature token. Then each opponent may draw a card and create a 1/1 white rabbit creature token for each opponent who does. Almost said does. For each opponent who does, you draw a card and you create a 1/1 white rabbit creature token. So why is this on here, Ian?
Because if you have a need for rabbits, this card.
I'm hunting rabbits.
No, people were talking about this. I
Why?
think it might have just been because the art is really cute and they want to play Tempt with Bunnies and cEDH. I genuinely think that's it.
Guys, come on. We have better cards than this. This is 2024. We have the technology.
I know. This is 2024. We can play 20-Toed Toad.
Or we could play Wick the Whorled.
Anyways, the bunnies are pretty bad. I can so like the only time this card is actually good is people actually take the offer because it like doesn't suck then, right?
Why? But, no, it's still bad.
It's pretty bad, I think.
We've done this math, Ian. We no, don't play this card. Don't play this card.
Think we should play this card. I was very good. I said that at the beginning. That
Why
was the
did
first
you
thing
add it to the set review?
Because people were talking about it. I wanted to say it was bad. Also, it's called Tempt with Bunnies. This is a cute card.
We're hunting rabbits. Next card on our list is Calamity of Cinders. This is a sorcery that costs 5 generic and 2 red. Has Convoke, though, and says Calamity of Cinders deals 6 damage to each untapped creature. This is a pretty neat board wipe.
Yeah, hey, do you play creatures and want them to live a board wipe? Well, have I got a job for you?
Do I have a card for you, kid?
Yeah,
I don't know why I said it with that accent. I don't even know what that accent's supposed to be, kid. It's like some miscellaneous East Coast accent. Undefined. As someone
from the East Coast. No.
It's some undefined accent.
Okay.
It's definitely from the east side of the country.
You're an idiot.
Yes.
Moving on. Okay.
You can play this as a board wipe for 7 mana.
Yeah. It's got Convoke. Don't be like that.
Yeah, it does have Convoke.
Hey, and also, you've been fucking suggesting Winds of Abandon for like 2 years now.
Yeah, but like Winds of Abandon permanently deals with shit.
Yeah.
Like this doesn't. People can still bring shit back because it's going to a graveyard.
Yeah,
so I guess
this can cost like 2 mana.
I guess it can cost 2 mana, but whatever. It's fine. Next card on our list is an instant. It's Into the Flood Maw. It costs 1 blue to cast and has Gift a tapped fish. You may promise an opponent a gift as you cast the spell. If you do, they create a tapped 1/1 blue fish creature token before its other effects. So if it resolves, they will get this effect. Return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. If the gift was promised, instead return target non-land permanent an opponent controls to its owner's hand.
If you give a man a fish, he'll bounce his creature. But if you teach a man to fish...
No. So you got it backwards. If you teach a man to fish, if you don't teach a man how to fish, you return that creature to their hand. If you teach a man to fish, I don't know. This is a cool card. It's like a little close to being like in the like Chain of Vapor-esque category.
The reason to play this card is because there's a lot of decks, like genuinely a lot, that have been like, hey, I can't play a Chain of Vapor because if it goes back to me, it messes me up so
the
bad.
Game is over.
yeah. Like, okay, here's my Seedborn Muse deck or my Kinnan or anything like that, right? Like those are decks.
Honestly, even like Tivit decks, right? Like there's times in Tivit where you're just like, like I really don't want this to come back.
It'll bounce your One Ringer and stuff like that, right? So like a lot of the slower blue decks, right? And in those situations, this card's actually pretty solid because like a lot of times you really want a flexible bounce piece that saves you in the early game, but you don't have something that does it, right?
And do you really care if your opponents get a tapped fish? Do you really care?
It's tapped.
That is such. That's the thing about this. That it's such a non-cost, right?
Yeah.
That it could have just been part of the full spell, and you didn't need to have the like weird templating with gift. Because I will say, like, gift makes like I'm interested to see the set notes for this because one thing I have been thinking about is the way gift is templated is you have to make that decision as you are casting the spell. So it's like kind of odd in all of that. I guess it kind of works the same way. I guess it kind of works the exact. Yeah. It works the same way as like anytime you like, what's the thing when you pay?
Like, yeah.
No. I'm talking about when you like,
kicker?
Kicker. Thank you. Why am I fucking not able to find that word? But yeah, that's kind of what it works in that same vein. So, but yeah, into the Flood Maw. Great in decks. It is the replacement for Chain of Vapor in decks that care about your permanents. In decks that you kind of want to be returning your permanents or you don't care about them, fucking keep on playing Chain of Vapor, kid.
Nice. You did it.
Next card on our list is Dawn's Truce. It is a colorless and a generic and a white instant that has gift a card. So you may promise an opponent a gift as he has the spell. If you do, they draw a card before its other effects. You and permanents you control gain hexproof until end of turn. If the gift was promised, permanents you control also gain indestructible until end of turn. So yeah, this is like a weird,
bad heroic intervention.
Yeah, it's like heroic intervention, but worse.
Yeah. Yes, I think this card's bad. I wasn't sure why you added it, to be honest.
Well, I will say for like white and low color white decks, I think there is some benefit here. I think it gives you some play against, I hate saying this, but it gives you a little bit of play against the Oracle decks, which is nice. A little bit of stack-based play against Oracle decks, which is nice.
Which is very funny, but yes.
Yeah, but...
Because it is one of the few things you literally can't do anything about, right?
Yeah, and so like if the spell resolves... Now, granted, that is a bit of a cute interaction, but I do think for like low-color white decks, this is a nice little grab, just because of the fact that
I also think like... Sorry.
No, I was just going to say that I think it gives you like a little bit more play and a little bit more interactivity in a format where that is very, very good. And low color white decks tend to be very permanent based. Right. And so having something that lets you have that interactivity, I think is nice.
Yeah. And also like it is one of the few effects, and maybe I'm a little harsh on it, but like the hexproof in a Bowmasters format where white doesn't really have many answers that for this mana value that don't remove them for an extended period of time, right? That's the big part, right? Like, this doesn't blink out your creatures. This doesn't like stop them from looping. This doesn't, do the everybody lives thing where no one can die this turn, right? They're not phasing out, right? So like, while I'm kind of negative on it, I do think that there are places where we should consider it.
Yeah, I think like in a Winota shell, this is probably a considerable card. I don't know that it necessarily makes the cut, but I think it's a card that you're probably going to be thinking about. And
it's within the first 120, I think.
Yeah,
probably.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I absolutely can see this being worthwhile to play in mono white decks. So
sure.
Some value there. Next card on our list here is got an enchantment. It's Festival of Embers. It costs 4 generic and a red, and it says during your turn, you may cast instant and sorcery spells from your graveyard by paying 1 life in addition to their other costs. If a card or token we put into your graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. And then it also has an activated ability for a generic and a red, sacrifice Festival of Embers. So this is interesting. It's a bit expensive.
Yeah.
Bit expensive. But having that repeatable kind of graveyard action is kind of nice.
Yeah, it's a weird one, right? Like I don't know where it goes. But
yeah, I don't know where it goes either, but I can look at it and go, that's good.
Yeah, it's a permastatic Past in Flames, right? But like with Yawgmoth's Will text where like things then get exiled, but it does have an answer for that. It's like it's a weirdie. I know like one of my clients who works on Rowan is like trying this out because obviously in that deck you're just like dumping a bunch of instant sorceries in there and then it like just pops off, right? But it's a weird card, but it's cute. I like it.
Yeah, not everything that we say here or we talk about here are bangers, but they're interesting, and that's what we like to talk about on this channel is interesting. Our final card of this set review is 3 Tree City. It is a legendary land and says as 3 Tree City enters, choose a creature type. You can tap it for colorless, or you can tap it for 2 generic, and you choose a color, add an amount of mana of that color equal to the number of creatures you control of the chosen type. So it's like it's like what's the card I'm thinking of? The Nykthos, but for creatures, baby.
Yeah. What's interesting about this one is that it counts tokens, right? So like the people who've been trying to make Krenko a thing for like the longest time, like this is your red Gaia's Cradle, right? Like that's like the interesting stuff here, right? Like if you are in some sort of like weird cEDH fringe type of deck, like an Elf Ball, like I don't mind playing this in Elf Ball. You probably play this and Gaia's Cradle and Nyx Bloom, right? Like just all of the things, right? So it is for, once again, more obscure decks. At the same time, like I'm pretty sure you can just like use this as like a Gaia's Cradle and Magda too, which is like nothing. It's a weirdie, but it's not bad, right? Like it's not bad at all.
Yeah, and like you said, like I think if you're in a deck like Magda or Marwyn or any of those types of decks that really care about creature types, I think this is probably it's a pretty free card to play, right? Like I think that's what makes it good in those is it's like it doesn't really cost you anything to play.
Right.
And it's just got a lot of upside. And so I think
weird decks where like it's just gonna do the thing, right? Like Azami, right? Like that is just like a blue cradle like effect for Azami in a deck that already like kind of wants to draw a bunch of cards and like tap a bunch of stuff and then untap a bunch of stuff, right? Like so it's got a lot of niche interactions, and I'm curious to see who breaks this first because I think it's gonna do some busted stuff, but I don't know where.
Marwyn Pilots, this is a shout out to you. Please, come on, get it. Make our girl great again.
Who?
Marwyn, baby. Let's get that. Let's get Marwyn back. Let's get Marwyn back into the top of cEDH.
Yeah, sure.
Let's get that. Let's get it going.
Top. Yeah, for sure. Where Marwyn's always been the top of cEDH.
It was definitely at the top of cEDH for a time. So that is it. That's our set review. And, we talked about it a little bit at the end of the last episode. Throughout this episode is, it's cool. There's got a lot of cool stuff in the set. I find it hard to get excited about this set personally. what are your thoughts overall?
Yeah, I mean, if anything, I'm nervous about this set. Like as I mentioned, I think this set goes a long way towards homogenizing play patterns in cEDH, and that is, as I've said since day one, big bad, big no fun. Maybe I'm wrong. I would honestly really,
I would love to be wrong about that.
Times. Yeah, I would really like to be wrong about how good Pollywag and specifically Floodcaller are. But
I think I don't know that there is a chance. Let me put it to you this. I think that you are more likely to be wrong about Valley Floodcaller than you are to be wrong about Pollywag. I think Pollywag, it's like and when I say you're more likely, I mean it's like 1% more, right? Like I think that Pollywag is just so, it's like there's no chance that is not going to be just
a format staple.
Yeah, forever. Like there's no way it's not right in the same vein as Mystic Remora and Rhystic Study. Like you just, oh cool, we have a third one. And Valley Floodcaller, I think there's going to be plenty of decks that aren't going to necessarily play it because it's just not really in line. Like I think again, like I think Tivit is a great example of that. I've seen people try to shove like Born lines into Tivit, and I don't think it really works terribly well. I think it's kind of awkward. And I've seen people try to shove it into like, Nadu decks and shit like that. And again, I don't think it works particularly well there. And I think that I think Pollywog is just so generic. Like it just goes in every blue deck. Like there isn't a blue deck it doesn't go in. And Floodcaller, I can at least make a case for a reason to not play that card, right? Like there's a real world reason that you just don't care about it. And, Pollywog, on the other hand, I just can't think of any reason to just not play another Mystic Remora and Rhystic Study, right? Like I literally got one at 1 mana, 2 mana, 3 mana. There you go. Like,
yep. Yeah. Sorry, this is a very bummer note to end this review on, but sometimes that is the nature about
and there's a lot of fun stuff in this set too.
Yeah.
But
sure.
I think there's a lot of stuff in here. There's like a couple things that are just that are very clearly going to be format staples to the point that they are probably going to annoy us to no end. And like I'm not super worried about cEDH's format. I think it's fine. Like I'm not really worried about it like being totally homogenized. I am worried that Tim the Crom just continues to be the only option for a lot of people for a lot of decks. And I think that the more that deck is like the stock option for people to play at a tournament, the worse the format is. So that is my like kind of rationale for why I think that, I don't know that you necessarily need to ban those cards, but I think that there is probably a need for like some sort of intervention from the rules committee to do something, right? Is kind of how I feel about it. I don't necessarily know the correct answer to that. I think that there does need to be some answer to something. I think Bowmasters would go a really long way. But again, I think that, and I could probably do a whole episode on this, that I think that the onus of the rules committee is to, work in the best interest of everybody in the format. And the reality is that cEDH is not 1% any longer. It is now rapidly, becoming a, 20-30% of the format. It is a sizable portion. It is starting to become about on par with how, competitive standard play is in, or competitive modern play or whatever. You're seeing the competitive breakdown between competitive players and casual players start to finally reach EDH. And so I think the onus is really on the RC to treat it as such, and to, and I'm not saying we need to like ban and think only with competitive people in mind. I actually generally think that the RC's ban philosophy I'm very in line with most of the time. The biggest issue I have though is their unwillingness to look at, of making moves just because of cEDH or whatever. But there are some things that I think that they could do that would benefit the whole format and also benefit cEDH a lot more than anybody else. But I think that it would generally be a good thing if like Bowmasters left our format.
Which is like, at the end of the day, and this is kind of one of my things, is like, does that really affect the average casual player if no Bowmasters exist?
Nobody cares. I mean, it's the same thing with Flash, right? Like, how many people were actually playing Flash outside of cEDH, right? And it's a thing where I think that you can make that call and recognize that, hey, there's a card that has just completely warped the cEDH metagame in a way that you can't play counterplay to the best deck in the format any longer. And that is a huge downside. And honestly, we should probably do like a whole episode just talking on this type of stuff. But I don't like to be a Debbie Downer, even though I've been a Debbie Downer for 2 episodes now. But with that being said, Ian, you've talked a little bit about coaching on this episode and some of your coaching clients and stuff that you figured out with them. How can people get a hold of you, and what does this coaching look like from you? How can people do that shit?
If our talks in the format today have left you with a sort of cEDH based existential dread, and you're looking for a little bit of a boost, you can find me at any of the places in our link tree, but specifically ComedIanMTG@gmail.com is easiest. And then, Discord at Comedian_MTG. Just shoot me a DM there, or at ComedIanMTG over on Twitter and Instagram. Cal is lovely enough to put all of those in our link tree. For cEDH coaching, the format is still in place where I am competing in it, and hopefully y'all will be as well. No, seriously. I think, despite us sort of bitching about some homogeneity in the format, doesn't mean that it's still not the format that I love and devote my time to. It just means that things are a little bumpy due to this set, and that's okay. But
you don't quit on things you love.
Yes,
that's how I feel about it. So.
Absolutely. And so, that being said, if you want to take that next step up, competitively speaking, find me over at any of the places we mentioned before, and get you that next level up in your coaching game, and hopefully get you all to those top tables, which many of the people I've worked with have.
Don't forget, also hit that subscribe button and like button if you are on YouTube. If everybody watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. We would hit our goal of hitting 10,000 subscribers by the end of this year in no time whatsoever. So please, if you are not subscribed yet, because we see the breakdown, we know that most people who are watching this aren't subscribed. So what the fuck are you doing, kid? Hit that subscribe button. But we honestly
knows when you're sleeping and knows when you're awake.
I'm Santa Claus. See, the thing that you didn't know, right, is that Candra was actually spelled with a C, and Caleb at the front of it was spelled with an S.
Did you just fully dox yourself?
I did just fully dox myself, but it's okay. I've kind of fully doxed myself early on, so people could figure it out.
Okay, cool.
But that's the thing is, I spell Caleb with an S. It makes perfect sense. I'm Santa Claus, baby. It's like Scott Calvin. It's the Santa Claus. I put on the pajamas. I become Santa Claus.
What is fucking happening?
I don't fucking know. Thanks for watching The Mind Sculptors. Head on over to patreon.com/The Mind Sculptors to help support the show. If you want to keep seeing this, also go over and make sure you hit a like and subscribe. If you're on iTunes, any of that stuff, make sure to leave a review for us on Apple Podcasts. It really helps us out in the algorithm. With that, I'm Cal.
I'm Ian.
Stay sculpty, everybody.
Ooh.